Reddit, what's the saddest thing you have ever witnessed? Story 1, it happened to me yesterday. I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I was dropping my son off at kindergarten. One of the other moms there has 4 kids, and her second one is in my son's class. As we were about to leave, I saw the mom of 4 with her baby strapped to her, and her 2-year-old son was having a tantrum about walking home. I gave her the "we've all been there, stay strong" look that parents give each other. So the mom says to the kid, "Why don't you go home with him? He looks like he wants you." My initial reaction was, "Hey, don't drag me into your drama." But I understand met her frustration. I bent down to be at level with the kid, and I said, "Yeah, for sure. I've got some dryer vents. I can use some small arms to help me clean." The joke was obviously lost on the kid, but the mom thought it was hilarious. Anyway, the kid opens his arm like he wants a hug. So whatever, I give him a hug. Then he clings to me for like 5 minutes. I've said maybe 5 words to this kid in my life, and he's golding onto me like he's afraid of falling down. His mom says, "I think he misses his dad." And like, "Is he away?" And she says, "No, he's just not a hugger." Neither am I. So this poor kid would go willingly into the arms of a stranger because his parents don't hug him enough. That was sad as. Story 2, my coworker's good friend was pregnant when she found out her husband was killed in an auto accident. She had the baby a few weeks later, but her mental anguish was taking a toll on her. One night, she fell asleep while breastfeeding the baby, and the poor baby got smothered to death. My coworker came to work and was so distraught that she couldn't even talk to customers. She just sat in her office, crying, and I felt so horrible that I couldn't do anything to make it better for her or her friend. Here I am, worrying about stupid, and seeing this kind of pain puts things back into perspective for you. Story 3, my math teacher's last class before retirement. Nobody showed up except me and some friends. We literally did nothing for 1 hour straight. The bell rings, he let out the saddest goodbye I ever heard in my life. Almost cried for real. Story 4 was in a restaurant. A small boy was trying to ask his mom a question. She just kept ignoring him. And when she finally turned to him, she told him to shut up, play on your tablet. His face after that was the saddest thing. Kind of broke my heart, TBF. Story 5, about to take a flight to Florida. It was supposed to leave around 7 p.m., but it kept getting delayed. Then it got delayed some more, then a bit more. Hours later, the flight eventually got canceled. Turned out, they never had a pilot, and they spent all that time trying to get another one. And instead of canceling the flight earlier, so we can all get new flights, they kept delaying the decision until there was no other option. On the line to get a new flight around midnight at this point. Suddenly we can all hear this woman getting louder, saying what? He's gone. No, apparently this woman was in Florida to see her nephew, who was terminally ill, and didn't have long. He passed away before she could get there. If the flight was even an hour late, she would have made it in time. Grief-stricken, the woman throws her drink. It goes behind the counter, but a couple feet away from any ticket agent. The head agent has the police called and has her arrested or at least taken away. Story 6 was sitting at a bus stop, and a dog came running around the corner of a busy intersection, saw me, and started running across the road towards me. It got hit, I bawled, and still do when I think about it. Story 7, a few months before my grandma died, I was in her bedroom with my dad to say hi. She was sleeping, and my dad sat down on her bed, softly saying, "Mom, Mom." Years old man, sounded like a little kid, and it broke my heart. I saw a dirty, skinny kitten picking around in a pile of trash bags. He tried to eat a Cheeto and made a tiny depression in the dirt, too, but nothing came out. He was clearly starving. I took him home with me that day, 6 years ago, because I started to cry thinking about leaving him there to die. Now, he's a giant goofball who rules my house. Edit apparently people like Melvin. Hey, erase a ton of pictures of my special kitty. Oh, also, he's named Melvin after Melvindale, Michigan, which is where I found him. Story 8, 8M Indian. So because of the poverty, sometimes you see some pretty sad. This was a few years back, and I was in school, so I had no money. I saw a dying street dog whimpering on my way back from school. I think it may have been hit by a vehicle since it wasn't moving and its leg was in a weird angle. Mind you, this is India, where even people often don't get this type of thing medically serviced, much less dogs. I then saw the local beggar who knocks on car windows for pennies, go to the local store and buy some water and biscuits. He then went to the dog, kneeled down, comforted it, and gave it some biscuits and water. I just watched for a few minutes, but it seemed like he was there the whole time until it died. I didn't talk to him that time, but the next day on my way back to school, I asked another local if he saw what happened afterwards. Apparently the guy took the dog and buried it someplace instead of leaving it to rot on the street, which would be par for the course. Story 9, I work in a hospital, so I see lots of sad stuff, but nothing compared to what I saw just a few months ago. A little boy who was being babysat by his grandmother chased his ball out into the street and was hit by a car and killed while he and grandma were in the front yard. His grandmother was unable to do anything to stop him or intervene in any way because she was in her 70s and had to use a walker. I remember being in the ICU waiting room after the news was broken to his parents and grandmother, and his parents were screaming and cussing at Grandma, saying how could she let this happen? They never wanted to see her again. They hated her. She would never see her any of her other grandchildren again, and they hoped that she would burn in. It got so bad that security had to come in and intervene before it got too far. The look on that old lady's face while her daughter and son-in-law were screaming at her is something I will never, ever forget. Story 10, I was at a convention, and I saw a father and his son in line to play Mario Kart 8. They had to wait for a while, so the son got distracted and started playing a different demo off to the side. And then it was their turn. The dad tried to get his son to play Mario Kart with stuff like, please, we shouldn't make these people wait. The son was playing Star Fox Zero, which no one else was playing, so he could easily get right back on. But he instead yelled back, saying he was busy. The dad tried playing Mario Kart by himself, but was very disheartened and confused even with a Nintendo helper with him. He clearly didn't care at all about anything at that convention and just wanted to spend time with his son. Story 11, when I was 12 years old, my brother, then 15, died of a sudden heart attack in front of me and my cousins. My aunt was a med in the military, and she didn't stop giving him CPR until 2 EMT pulled her off. But what hurt me the most that night is how I couldn't cry. I knew what happened, and I knew how I should be feeling, but the tears never came. I didn't cry until I saw my dad break down at the viewing before his funeral. Edit, thank you for the kind words that everyone has given me and the stories others have chosen to share. It's comforting to know there are others who got through pains just like this. It gives me hope to get through the day. 3 Edit 2, I can't believe all the kindness going on because of this comment. I'm proud of everyone commenting for making it through these dark moments we chose to share, and I hope everyone hear the best going forward, to keep seeing the light of love. Also, if anyone needs a light read that might help come to terms with the loss of a loved one, I suggest The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. My mom used quotes from this book at my brother's funeral, and it always gave me so much comfort hearing those words whenever I read the book. Story 12, this father and his son were sitting next to us at a restaurant. The son was like a 12 or 13, very happy-looking kid who was enjoying his food. The whole meal the dad was barely acknowledging his existence despite the son making several attempts to talk about things. After a while, he just stopped trying to talk to him, and you could see the happiness drain out of his face a little, but he was still jazzed about eating. The father wasn't eating the food on his plate, but the son was, and after he finished, the waitress came by and asked about dessert. The son had a worried look on his face as he looked at his dad for approval as he ordered a brownie sundae thing. The dad just kind of scoffed as he turned the page of the newspaper he was reading. The waitress brought the sundae, and the kid started eating. But after a few bites, he stopped and looked dejectedly at the dessert. He asked his dad if he wanted any because he couldn't finish it, and he was embarrassed about this. The dad says this is the most he said to the kid the entire meal. No, I guess I just don't eat as much as you. I should note here, the kid was by no means fat at all. Looked like an average teenage boy. The kid just nodded to himself and pushed the plate away. He really looked sad and ashamed, like he was about to cry. Maybe this triggered something in me or something, but I got really sad real quick and had to go to the bathroom to cry for a moment. When I came back, they were gone. I really hope that kid realizes his father isn't deserving of one iota of his love or affection, and the dude dies wondering why his son hates him. Story 13, a girl I used to be really close to lived with her grandparents because her mother died of cancer when she was 12 and her dad was always away in different countries for work. She came into my work a few days ago, student loans, and applied to be an independent student for her second year of university. When I asked why, she just told me to look in the forms. Turns out both her grandparents had died since I last saw her, and her dad is moving to Italy with his new girlfriend next month. She cried a bit, and I couldn't help but cry a little too. Story 14, two things, both with our foster son who has returned home to his mom. One, the day we returned him to his mom, we had to pick him up from school disturbing his nap, which sucked, and take him to the social services office. We waited there for a while with all his stuff packed up in boxes. The social worker came down and told us we could leave and took him from us. Little dude freaked out. He was screaming and kicking and looking at us frantically as we slowly walked away from him. It was horrifying, and it broke us completely. We managed to make it into the parking lot where they couldn't see us before we completely fell apart and sobbed openly. 2, after he went home, his mom allowed us a day visit with him about a month after. I picked him up at 9 a.m., and he looked drugged. He reeked of cigarettes. He's asthmatic. This is bad. Was wearing clothes that were way too small, some of which he had been sent with 5 months prior when he arrived in care. Despite us sending 2 tubs full of clothes home with him, and was totally lethargic, he perked up after an immediate nap at our house. But it was scary. When it was time to take him home, Mom met us at the car. She got him out of his car seat, but once she was standing with him in her arms, he started reaching for us. We said no, and he freaked out. He was pushing against his mom, crying and screaming for us, just like before. We kept it together better this time, but it was frightening to see that he didn't even want to go to his mom. He wanted to stay with us. Story 15, a woman kicking her deceased husband's coffin, spitting on it, and saying, "I hope you're burning in, you son of a." He had committed suicide and left her with 5 kids to raise alone. Story 16, my grandfather died after a long fight with ALS. In the end, he could pretty much only move his eyes under his eyelids. And sometimes not even that. After he passed, I sat with my mom and grandma for a long time. Every 10 minutes, my grandma checked his nose with a mirror, hoping to find him still breathing, hoping it wasn't true. Easily the saddest thing Eve ever seen. Story 17, my daughter was being bullied on the bus by some kids. Her class had a project where they grew a small plant in her class that they would present to their mothers for Mother's Day. She told me about it, but asked me to keep it a secret from Mom. I agreed. Every day, she would come home and tell me when the plant sprouted, and she was so excited as it grew and grew. As Mother's Day rolled around, she would ask me over and over again if I thought Mom would love it. I always reassured her that yes, her mom would absolutely love it, because she has worked so hard to take care of it and help it grow. Just like she had done with you, Mother's Day rolls around, and even I'm excited to see the plant. I happen to be home for work that day, and she comes home looking extremely sad. I asked her what was wrong, and I could tell she was on the verge of tears. She reached out her small hand and held out half of a broke styrofoam cup with some dirt in it. The cup had been crushed, and half of the words, "I love you, Mommy," were written on what was left of it. The dam broke as she said, "Happy Mother's Day, Mama," and she crumped to the ground bawling. My daughter, so proud of her plant, decided to show the other kids on her way home the gift she was going to give her mom. A boy promptly snatched it out of her hand and threw it to the ground. Everyone laughed as he stomped on it, and then grabbed the plant and threw it out the window. My daughter said she didn't cry because she wanted them to think she didn't care about the plant and that it didn't affect her. She was always the last stop on the way home, and she grabbed what she could of the cup and some dirt and tried to salvage anything left. To add insult to injury, the bus driver yelled at her that she was going to clean it up in the morning. I don't know if I mentioned this, but she was in the 1st grade at the time. She was 6 years old. I kill me to write that, remembering how upset I was about that. We bought a kit from the hardware store to build our own garden in the backyard. Since it seemed like she was interested in that sort of thing, it wasn't really the same though. Watching your kids see just how shitty people can be for the first time is crushing. Story 18, my grandfather died last Christmas, almost 20 years after his wife, and after a lengthy and very draining battle with dementia. When we were standing around his casket at his funeral, I heard how my mom asked him to please say hello to Mom for me. Story 19, I was hanging out with a friend of mine while he was working at a gas station store. Someone came in, bought a bunch of scratch tickets, went to a nearby counter to scratch them, cashed out the winners, used winnings to buy more, and he kept doing it until all the money was gone. My friend said that sort of thing is pretty normal. I don't think I could work at a gas station. Story 20, got into a vehicular accident. I was one of the passengers of a bus. Hard to describe the vehicle. Anyways, the driver lost control, and I was one of the lucky ones who hadn't got injured badly. We called emergency service, but told us it won't be there for about 40 minutes or so. So me and 4 other uninjured passengers helped the others. Driver's chest crushed between the steering wheel and the car seat. I saw blood everywhere. A man with a broken leg. A woman bleeding from the head. Passengers crying everywhere, but what really got me was these 2 old ladies, probably around their 60s or 70s. One of the women sitting with a broken leg and crying she has cleft palate. Let's just address her as Woman 1. So Woman 1 called out to us, asking us to help her sister, Woman 2, which is sprawled on the floor. I sat down beside Woman 2 and checked for pulse. It's faint. Woman 1 keep on insisting me to move her and take her to the hospital. I replied I can't move her because of her condition. I thought she broke her rib or head trauma. I don't know, all I could do was to wet her lips and fan her. After 5 minutes of tending her, I just realized her chest stopped rising. I shook her gently, no response. I kept on shaking her gently and asking her if she's all right, but with no avail. That's when Woman 1 started to cry uncontrollably. Her sister died in front of her, and there's nothing she could do, or I could do for that matter. I can still hear her cries and plead to God to this day. Story 21, I have a student who is clearly on the autism spectrum. He comes into music class saying things like I'm so dumb, or I can't do this. For a final project, I needed him to write lyrics for a blues song we were creating. 5 to 6 classes go, and the same responses of not being able to do it or not creative enough. I was trying to redirect his thinking or asking him if there was anything he likes to do so he can write about it. This has been a problem that this student's teachers and our counselors have been addressing, but his parents are refusing to believe that their child needs any kind of assistance and thinks that he just needs to study more and he'll be fine. So I ask him what he likes to do outside of school, and he says, I don't do anything. My parents make me study from when I get home until 10 p.m. I then ask, what about this summer? I'm sure you'll have time to play video games or go outside. He then says, no, my parents are making me study and do more work, so I'm ready for next year. They don't let me do anything. I've been super bummed for him. Story 22, found a cat on the side of the road. He was properly messed up. His lower jaw was basically detached, blood everywhere, still no idea what happened to him, but the sounds he was making were horrific. Gurgly cries of pain. Ugh. I took him to the out-of-hours vet as he had no collar, but unfortunately he didn't make it through the night. Story 23, a few years ago, I passed a homeless woman on the streets who was barefoot, dirty, and disheveled looking. The city I live in, Perth, Australia, is rich and prosperous. People are walking by her like she doesn't exist. She has the saddest look on her face I have ever seen. Not upset or crying, just broken. Her spirit was gone. Her sign said something like I was raped a few months ago and got pregnant. Now I need money for medical checkups, clothes, and food for my baby. Whether the story was true or not, I have no idea. But she was clearly pregnant. It absolutely crushed my heart. I just stood at a distance and watched her for about 10 minutes with no idea what to do, before just walking away like everyone else. I will never forget her face. Her baby would be 3 or 4 by now. Story 24. When I was a funeral director, I used to run the firm. I worked for his mortuary at one stage in my career, so I looked after the deceased who came in to us primarily. We had a 10-week-old baby girl who died due to neglect come into us, and we were waiting for her scummy, disgusting parents to arrange the funeral, or at least give the local council authority to arrange the funeral if they couldn't afford it or didn't want to. Sadly, it was a good 910 months she was with us, and the family avoided all contact. Calls to them were ignored or buttoned, and the poor angel just lay there in the funeral home mortuary in her tiny coffin. I had to see her and check her every morning and watch her getting more fragile and decompose every day. Even the local bereavement office at the hospital got involved and tried to get social services to get some sort of court ruling so they could lay her at rest. In the end, the family answered their phone and grudgingly let the council take care of the funeral. At the last minute, the dad tried to see her, the same child he and his missus let starve and waste away to death, but he couldn't, as she was sadly unviewable, not to me sadly. I will have the images of her every day to remember, and the parents didn't even go to the funeral. Every time I saw her little coffin, I died a bit inside. Not all funeral directors are emotionless. We very much feel it, especially things like that. Seeing her little coffin leave the home in the back of a limo with no family or flowers was just the saddest thing you can see. Story 25, I was working on a shitty neighborhood at a city housing complex. While on a break and chatting with my coworker, a little boy came running at us crying. I asked him what was wrong. He begged us to call the police. I did so. While standing with him, his mom's boyfriend was beating the living out of his mom. Cops were there in seconds. They threw the looser down, trying to run away. The saddest thing was the little guy was holding a Batman toy to his chest as hard as he could the whole time. Story 26, seeing my mom cry. She wanted to leave him because of everything he did, but couldn't support me and my sister on her own. I wish I could go back and change things. Story 27, we were poor growing up, and even poorer after Dad left. My mom worked her tail off supporting myself and my 3 older siblings, but she was not equipped to be a single mom, and a lot of got dropped. None of us kids cared, but Mom really took it hard because so much of her identity was built around being able to provide for us. One particularly hard month, we were all home from school waiting for Mom to get home, and the power goes off. We looked out the front window and saw a man from the power company walking away from the side of our house. We didn't know what it was all about. An hour later, Mom comes home a little later than usual. She is carrying a take-and-bake pizza that she had bought as a treat for us on her way home. We hadn't had pizza in a couple months. Most nights' dinner was noodles and gravy. I still can't make it like Mom did. But if you grew up in poverty, you know how poverty food from your parents can still taste better than anything you can buy. Mom walked in the door, and my sister told her what had happened, and I saw my mom break. She had stretched herself so far to get just this $10 pizza, and thought that she had more time to pay the bill, and now she couldn't even cook it for us, and she just broke. I don't know how to describe it, but I bet you can picture it. Mom is better now. All 4 of us kids are better now. Dad is fine too, but seeing the impact of a parent feeling like they have failed has informed the entire arc of my own parenting journey. Mom thinks she let us down, but she never even came close. I want my kids to say the same. Story 28, probably not the saddest, but the most recent. I was driving, and a female mallard duck was standing in the road, refusing to move. Cars were honking and having to drive around her, but she stayed. I parked and walked over to get her out of the road and saw that she was standing near a storm drain grate. I assumed she was crossing the road with her ducklings, and they all fell in. I looked into it thinking they might be just inside, but the water was fast-moving like a river. It just made me so sad to think that she was a mother one minute and then wasn't the next, and she couldn't understand why. She just stayed where she last saw her babies and waited for them. I chased her from the road into the park, but when I drive off, I could still see her lurking nearby. Story 29. I watched a kid get run over by a bus. After both front and back wheels running him over, he attempted to stand. People gathered around, and it all felt like everything was in slow motion. He looked around looking confused. Soon, a man ran over, and he was completely torn up over it. He volunteered a lot at the church across the street. Turns out it was his dad. The boy began to turn blue and swell a lot. A woman pulled over and attempted CPR. She started to cry. The man was crying. Everyone was crying. It felt like it took forever for the ambulance to get there. When they did, they began to use the paddles. His face, after being run over, will forever be etched in my memory. He was so confused looking, and there was sand all over his face, which seems like such a silly thing to remember. But anytime I see sand on a kid after playing in the dirt, I think of him. His family was truly amazing and kind. They took me on a family vacation with them and had me listen to some audio tapes he made. He had a crush on a girl and was struggling with being bullied and feeling like an outsider. I can't imagine being a parent and hearing your child's pain of bullying after they die. Story 30. I witnessed a domestic dispute outside a gas station in rural America. First, the obviously upset, very pregnant woman waddles up to the ashtray on the side of the gas station. I heard slurred and distant cries of a woman's name from blocks away. She starts looking for large butts to smoke. The slurring man comes into the picture, and a Jerry Springer episode unfolds across the parking lot. Pregnant mom desperately smoking other people's butts, drunk boyfriend being drunk and desperately starts yelling. The cashier comes out and starts playing marriage counselor, clearly familiar with the people involved. They proceeded to air all their dirty laundry, shouting from across the parking lot, with the cashier mediating things: drug abuse, domestic violence, money problems, infidelity, legal problems, you name it. In the end, some good Samaritan talked the drunk guy into getting a ride to his mom's house to sleep it off. The encounter wasn't that sad, but whatever world that baby was born into was. Story 31. My best friend in high school losing his 16-year-old lab. Had only known one dog. Took the dog out for a picnic of peanut butter treats. We put him down around my friend's whole family. It was a sunny and crisp October day. Story 32. More of a humorous occasion. But last week I had my vasectomy, and the doc let me see the vas before he snipped them. Goodbye, my children, is what I said on the table. Story 33. Saw a guy I worked with have a heart attack. He was holding his arm and gasping for air. I sat him down and coached him to breathe while someone else called 911. He was hyperventilating and crying. He told me he was scared. I barely knew him. Someone asked him if there was anyone we should call. He said, no, this man. Absolutely scared of dying. Had no one to call at a time. He was knocking on death's door. I was so sad for him. The ambulance came and he was okay, but that one moment where he was so alone and scared was really, really sad. Story 34. I went to help look for a missing toddler in my neighborhood, and after searching for an hour, I returned to the house to get further guidance. As I approached the grandfather, he told me he was going to go pick up some water for all of us. While standing next to him as he opened the car door, I witnessed him discover his grandson locked in an overheated car. When he placed the baby at my feet on the ground for CPR, the only thing I can think to do was take off my shirt and put it under him, so he wasn't in the dirt. He only had on diaper, and there was blood trickling from his now purple nose-mouth area. They'll never forget his grandfather's blood-curdling scream. The child was dead. Story 35. My father holding my 5-month-old son after he had passed. SIDS. My father had made a 4-hour dive in just under 2. He walked in a room where the doctors were keeping us, and his hole being crumpled. He reached out for my sweet boy wrapped in white sheets and bawled as he held him. In that moment, he had taken all the pain. I couldn't feel. The rush of grief was palpable. In that moment, he looked how I felt, totally, utterly devastated. Story 36. My niece. When she was 7, Mom is a drug head, bringing all varieties of people home. Dad is a raging, abusive alcoholic that thankfully works away from home half the month. My husband and I were doing some lawn maintenance, cutting trees that had fallen and loading the logs onto a trailer. She put on these huge gloves and started manhandling logs that outweighed her, crying the entire time. I stopped and asked what was wrong. Mom left a few days ago, and I'm hungry. I thought if you thought I was useful, you might let me eat, but I'm hungry, and these are too heavy. Can I wash your truck? I told her, go get your brother and sister. We're going for Mexican food, and then we'll buy y'all some stuff you can microwave or eat cold. The 6 CPS call was made that day. We moved into the house until their grandpa got home from work, and he could take them. Brother-in-law is worse now. Still has custody. Sis-in-law is now ex, and she's worse too. But the kids are 18, 17, and 15 now, and thankfully have many escape routes. Story 37. There was an AskReddit thread a few months back asking parents why they had to cut their adult kids out of their lives. One answer was from a mom whose straight-A son went to college, and ended up dropping out and coming back home with a drinking problem and a slew of mental issues. Stuff like bad depression to the point of threatening suicide. But the big parts were crazy theories that his parents or the school or government were plotting against him, and hearing voices, pretty obvious schizophrenic psychotic break. The OP chalked it up to his alcohol, abuse, more likely self-medication. And when he didn't get his together after some time, she kicked him out and said in the post if he was willing to give up his abuse, she'd be willing to let him back in her life. This woman uses Reddit. She clearly knows the first couple things about the internet. I find it so difficult to believe she'd never have Googled his symptoms, or at the very least talked to anybody about it who would suggest schizophrenia. Now her son's homeless with addiction and severe unchecked mental problems, and she'll probably never see him again, assuming he's still alive, and it could have been completely prevented if she had Googled hearing voices. Story 38 worked in a retail establishment. Little kid in pigtails asked her dad if she could read while he shopped. He said yes. She ran off to the books, grabbed on, and then went to the housing department like she told him she would, and sat on a kid-sized beanbag and read. He came over when he was done. She was excited to show him her book and what she had read. He cut her off and yelled at her for liking stupid nerd. The look on her face murdered my soul. The best I could do is when they were walking to the front, I stopped and said, "Hey, that was one of my favorites as a kid. I wanted to beat the out of that guy with every ounce of my existence." Story 39. There was an outside cat that came around my house because I fed her. She got pregnant, and I told my husband that I didn't want her to give birth outside because it would be dangerous for the kittens. We caught her, took her to the vet to have her checked for feline AIDS and feline leukemia, and moved her into a crate in our bathroom. One night, I was laying in bed watching Hulu, and she was laying next to me, and her water broke. She shouldn't have been having the babies for 2 to 3 more weeks. She gave birth to the first one, and I thought that she had gotten him out of his amniotic sac, but she hadn't. I watched him moving his little paws and opening his mouth, and I assumed he was out. He wasn't, and he died. When she had the second one, she just left him laying there and didn't want to do anything with him, so I took a warm washcloth and rubbed his head until his amniotic sac opened so he could breathe. The third one was stillborn, and it dying in utero was probably what sent her into early labor. The saddest thing I have ever seen were those 2 dead cat babies laying on a towel. While none of us knew what to do, we didn't have a shovel, so I went to Walmart to get one. And they didn't have any. The next saddest part was my husband digging them a tiny grave with a trowel. It does have a happy ending, though. When I woke up the next morning, I went to check on the one living baby, fully expecting him to be dead, and there were suddenly 2 of them. Apparently she had given birth to the 4th one overnight, and had just gone into supermom mode and did everything right with that one. They were premature babies that only weighed an ounce, and we were worried that she wouldn't take care of them. But she did. She's been a great mom. I weigh them every week to track their progress. And last Sunday, they were something like 12, 8 ounces and 13, 6 ounces. They have caught up to average weight for their age, have learned to walk and play, and are teething now. I can post pictures of them if anyone wants to see them. Edit here, there if it works. The one without the white lines up his face is called the placental child because his mother didn't chew off his umbilical cord and only ate part of the placenta and left him chilling out there. We had to cut his umbilical cord for her. He smiles really sadly. The one with the white lines is called One Man Cat Fight Jr. She is named after the cat we think is their dad. He screamed on the porch all the time and sounded like 2 cats fighting. She also screams a lot. The last picture is their mom, Mustache. Only Mustache's name is permanent. She's going to live with a friend, and that is what he is keeping. The other 2 have temporary names until they find homes. Cats maybe. Edit 2, wow. Thanks for the gold. I definitely didn't expect that. 3.